Welcome back to my channel, and listen up, because if what's circulating right now is true, Ripple might be about to make one of the boldest power moves in XRP's history. Rumors are flying across X and major crypto outlets that Ripple is preparing to acquire up to 1 billion XRP, or around 1 billion worth of their own token, to build what they're calling a digital asset treasury. Now, if this is legit, we're talking about Ripple themselves stepping in to scoop up massive liquidity straight from the market. It could completely change the short-term price dynamics of XRP and send shockwaves through the entire crypto space. So today, we're going to unpack exactly what's being said, who's reporting it, what is facts versus speculation, and what it could mean for your trades.
I am not a financial advisor. This video is based solely on my opinion and what I am personally doing in this market. I also want to let you know that some of the links below and in the descriptions are affiliate links, meaning I may get a commission, but it will be at no extra cost to you. Please remember that under no circumstances will I ever contact you and ask you for investments. You can confirm all of my real social media handles in the description and also at milkshakematty.com. This content is for educational and entertainment only, and I'm not a financial advisor.
But first, let's start with a quick market check-in, because overnight, both Bitcoin and XRP saw some really interesting movement. Right, let's pull up the latest charts. Bitcoin right now is sitting around 109,400 US dollars, holding strong after a powerful overnight breakout. We saw a big wave of momentum from the Asia markets pushing Bitcoin through resistance, and so far it's holding steady in that six-figure zone. That's a huge psychological level, and as long as it stays above 105k, the bulls are firmly in control. Meanwhile, XRP is trading at around $2.47, up slightly on the day and still consolidating near the higher end of the recent range. Buyers keep stepping in every time it dips under that $2.40 mark. It's a clear sign of strength. But as always, don't get complacent. Prices have a habit of flipping fast. What pumps overnight can retrace just as quickly once New York wakes up. So stay sharp, keep those stop losses tight, and if you're trading leverage, go small. This is a market that's going to reward discipline, not gambling. All right, with that quick update out of the way, let's get straight into what everybody's talking about right now. Ripple, XRP, and this rumored $1 billion buyback. So where has this rumor come from? This all started when Bloomberg released a report citing that people familiar with the matter saying Ripple Labs is leading an effort to raise at least 1 billion US dollars to accumulate XRP and form a new vehicle known as a digital asset treasury. According to that report, Ripple would contribute part of its own existing XRP holdings, and the new fund would then buy even more on the open market to create a reserve-style treasury that could be used strategically down the line. That's where the phrase Ripple acquiring 1 billion XRP started to spread across X and YouTube. But here's the key thing. The report never said 1 billion tokens. They said $1 billion worth of XRP, and that is a big difference. At today's price, roughly $2.47 per token, 1 billion tokens would actually cost around 2.47 billion US dollars. So what Ripple may be doing is raising 1 billion in capital to gradually purchase XRP, not buying a full billion coins outright. That confusion has been at the center of the hype, and that's exactly why it's so important to look at the numbers before jumping on any headline. Now, let's look back into the blockchain side, because there is some smoke here that adds credibility. Data from whale alerts and on-chain trackers show that Ripple recently transferred around 220 million XRP, worth roughly $500 million, from one of its escrow-controlled wallets into a brand new address that isn't escrowed and doesn't have the usual multi-signature protections. That has raised a lot of eyebrows. Normally, Ripple's tokens are held under very strict controls, with a set amount of release from escrow each month. But this particular move seems to break that pattern, and it aligns suspiciously well with the timing of these billion-dollar buyback rumors. CoinGape even described it as an unusual transfer that could represent the first stage of a building of this new treasury vehicle. So, is Ripple actually buying back XRP? Technically, they wouldn't need to. They already hold over 40 billion tokens. But by buying on the open market, Ripple could support liquidity, stabilize price volatility, and create a new level of market confidence. Let's talk about why Ripple would even want to acquire more XRP when they already own such a massive chunk. First is the control and the influence. By consolidating more XRP into a structured treasury, Ripple strengthens its ability to influence both the supply and the perception of security. If fewer tokens are freely circulating, every bull run gets amplified. Second is signaling confidence. A $1 billion accumulation plan sends a clear message to the institutions. Ripple believes in its own ecosystem enough to back it financially. It's the corporate equivalent of saying, we're all in. And third is preparing for expansion. Ripple's been making serious moves globally, licensing in the Middle East, partnerships in Asia, and expanding ODL corridors into new markets. Having a ready-made XRP reserve could allow them to fund future products, pay partnerships, or even provide instant liquidity when onboarding new banks and fintechs. But this is where most of Crypto X is getting confused. Some creators are posting that Ripple are buying 1 billion XRP confirmed, but the underlying data says $1 billion worth, not 1 billion tokens. At $2.47 each, that's roughly about 405 million tokens, not a billion. It's still massive, but not double that size. So yes, the number is big enough to matter, but it's important we call it for what it is. A $1 billion fundraise, not necessarily a billion token buyback. Even Bloomberg's follow-up article clarified that the amount raised would be used to accumulate XRP gradually, likely to avoid disrupting the market in one massive hit. That steady buy approach would mean Ripple could quietly support the price over time, maintaining deniability about the total value purchase. Now, you'd think a headline like Ripple to buy back $1 billion worth of XRP would send prices through the roof, right? But interestingly, the opposite happened. After the rumor broke, XRP actually dropped about 8 to 9% in the following 24 hours. Cointelegraph even published a piece titled Ripple's $1 billion buyback fails to lift price. So what's going on? Well, traders hate uncertainty. Some read this as Ripple trying to control supply again. Others worried about dilution or manipulation. But let's be honest, anytime a major company says they're moving hundreds of millions around, retail panics. But that dip could be short-lived. Historically, every time Ripple tightens its grip on supply, XRP eventually recovers stronger. Because once the noise clears, investors realize fewer tokens are actually available to trade. If Ripple goes ahead with this plan, it could reduce effective circulation supply by a meaningful amount. Analysts at CryptoSlate modeled that if the treasury accumulates even 400 to 500 million XRP over a 90-day period, the effect on the open market liquidity could lift prices between 6 and 15% without major volatility spikes. Think of it a bit like Bitcoin halving, but quietly executed by one of the biggest holders instead of the protocol. And it's not just about price. Ripple would be creating a sovereign-style reserve that could underpin future partnerships, maybe even institutional-grade products like ETFs or payment rails where XRP is pre-funded behind the scenes. If that happens, we're no longer talking about meme-level speculation. We're talking about XRP being treated like a structured commodity. Of course, not everybody's buying into the hype. Skeptics point out that Ripple already controls a large portion of the supply, so a new fund might just be moving coins from one pocket to another. There's also the question of timing. Ripple's still fresh off several regulation battles. The SEC case is mostly behind them, but any new large market impacting action could draw renewed attention from the watchdogs. That's why so far, all the reporting is using language like sources familiar with the matter and in discussion. Nothing official has been confirmed on Ripple's own channels. Here's what I'll personally be watching over the coming days and weeks ahead. Official statements from Ripple or its executives, especially mentioning anything around treasuries or a fundraise. Also looking out for on-chain movements, new Ripple-linked wallets suddenly accumulating XRP outside of escrow. Liquidity changes on major exchanges is something else you need to be looking out for. Repeated large XRP buys could signal accumulation. And lastly, we've got market sentiment. If XRP stabilizes, even as the broader market wobbles, buy pressure could be soaking up supply. Personally, I think there's substance to this. It's not just a random rumor. The on-chain data lines up too clearly with the reports, but the details are still blurry. It's clearly in motion, but whether it's a full $1 billion accumulation or an initial 500 million phase remains to be seen. Either way, it tells us one big thing. Ripple's not slowing down. They're gearing up for a future where XRP is central to payments, settlements, and liquidity systems worldwide. And if they're confident enough to throw another $1 billion at their own asset, that's a pretty clear message to the rest of the market. So don't underestimate how significant this could be once the full picture comes out. Now, before we wrap this up, a quick reminder for the traders out there. If you want to stay ahead of moves like this and see in real time how smart money's positioning, come and join the Crypto Wolfpack. Hit the link in the description or head over to milkshakematty.com and don't forget to use the promo code CRASH7 to get 4 weeks free access. So to summarize, yes, the rumor is real enough to pay attention to. Bloomberg, CryptoState and Cointelegraph are all reporting that Ripple's exploring a $1 billion accumulation plan. But as of right now, nothing is officially confirmed. We've seen major online transfers that suggest groundwork is already being laid. But until Ripple themselves announce it, take everything with a healthy dose of caution. What we can say for sure is this: Ripple's strategy continues to evolve and they're clearly playing the long game. Whether they're buying 400 million XRP or a full billion, it's still a huge signal that they believe in this asset's long-term future. And if you've been here since 2017, you know how long they've been building up for this moment. As always, trade safe, think smart, and don't let your emotions run your portfolio. But things are happening behind the scenes, and the more you understand why, the better you'll position yourself when the next wave hits. Until next time, stay sharp, stay disciplined, and I'll see you on the next one. And remember, the strength of the wolf is in the pack.